Well, we've been waiting for it all summer, all year. It's today. It's Back Cruise weekend. We are live in studio with a full audience. This is peak community for the atheist community of Austin. We've got count them, five of your favorite speakers on deck. It's all happening. Grab your phone. Whatever your concern, your quibble, your question, your debate topic, we've got some of the best brains of the ACA locked and loaded, plus myself here to direct traffic and try to keep it all on the rails. So keep those calls coming and hold on to your butts, because this is Rapid Fire Talk Heathen, and the show is coming right now. All right, yeah.
Look at that.
That's the energy we love. Glad to be here. Glad to be doing this. Glad all of y'all are here. Glad to be joined by you good folks. Welcome, everyone. Today is August 17th, 2025. I am your host and dungeon master of ceremonies, certified religious trauma therapist Christy Powell. And joining me right now is counselor in training Sofia Spina and former student Dr. Ben Hamilton. We'll be joined in a bit by Scott Dickey and Forrest Valkai, but lines are open now. You know, I say this basically every time that I host, but with the Swiss Army bag of brains that we have on deck today, we really are open to all of your questions about religion, secular humanism, atheistic morality, separation of church and state, Christian nationalism, creationism, religious trauma, human rights, queer rights, cosmology, philosophy, science, history, life, the universe, and everything. All that said, Sophia, remind us a little bit about who you are and maybe who you're hoping to talk to today.
Cool. So I'm just some lady, and as you can imagine, counselor in training, just graduated with my master's in marriage, family, and child counseling. So that's cool. I didn't even think about getting applause for that. I do that more often, just announce things that I do. I am happy to talk to pretty much anybody, but I think that talking about kind of maybe some of the more emotional issues that come up with religion is definitely one. I'm always intrigued by kind of how people are making sense or deconstructing, as trite as that word is. But yeah, I almost feel like the angrier the better sometimes, you know?
Bring it on, yeah. And Ben, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a physician. I'm also a trans man, and I want some calls today for why you think that some God that we can't see wants control of my body.
Yeah, that is a fair question. All right. Ben's body as battleground.
Yes.
All right, well, I guess we will get into it. Talk Heathen is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. We're a live call-in show, so get your calls in. We're at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. And with that, Ben, let's get to the Talk Heathen to Me segment. What do you got for me?
All right, I'm so excited. I don't usually get to announce this part of the show, so I'm so excited. So it is time for the Talk Heathen to Me segment where we answer questions. Very fun questions. So last week, we asked you to tell us, what gap can God always fit into? And here are the top three answers. We had number 3 from Godwin Absurdum, says God will always fit into the gap between the two contradicting beliefs of cognitive dissonance.
That's a good one.
Heady.
Very
concepts.
Yeah.
And number 2 from Know What says gap God can always fit into the tithe-sized hole in your bank account.
It's good. It's good work.
And in first place, we from R.I. Heathen 67 says, the gap God can always fit into is the anus. We know this because every time a believer tells you about him, that's where they pull the details out of.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So good.
Picturing one of those never-ending handshake, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, I also feel like that's where my brain immediately went. I'm like, come on, guys, this question. But they used it well.
Definitely. And we have another question for next week. So this week's question is, what shouldn't you see in the atheist community? So be sure to put your answers in the comment section below, not in the side chat, in the comments below, and we'll read the top 3 answers next time. But what do you two think? What do you think we shouldn't see in the atheist community?
I feel like that's a tough question because it is so broad. So I feel like I want to be clever and I want to be like, here's
You're
some
tempted to say something meaningful.
Yeah, here's some real pithy thing, but I'm just like, I don't know, jerkwads. Like that's what I'm gonna go with. Like, don't be an ass. That's
Yeah. So say we all. I don't know. Debates about Star Trek versus Star Wars, because we need to come together as a community and just unite. It's fine. Not be torn apart by these things. United on what? Yeah.
Like what?
It's Star Trek. You know it's Star Trek.
Okay, good.
We all know it's Star Trek.
I was. So the answer should be Star Trek.
So the answer is Star Trek. That's why we're not debating it anymore.
We need to unite around our correct answer.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
Not a formal or official stance of the atheist community of Austin. Opinions are held by the hosts themselves.
It's a correct opinion, though. So
But yeah, make sure you get your answers in, because we can't be the only ones having fun with this question. I'm sure you all will come
Please,
with
give us some
much
better
wittier
answers
than ours.
Yes.
They always do.
All right,
All
next
right,
up.
so I just want to mention that we definitely don't do this alone. So if we could go to the crew cam, they are the people who really make this happen, all the behind the scenes people. There they are. Woo! Sorry, I might have just blasted out y'all's ears there. They really do make everything happen. And
These in-person shows especially, so much extra work.
Yeah, there's people coming in and out, making sure, like somebody brought me, some water in this godless bitches mug, which I don't think was pointed, but I don't know, I guess we can ask. They really do make everything happen. And also we're awesome people. Like, I don't know if people out there know that we do hang out with them. It's not like a hosts and other. It's like they're actually amazing and awesome, and we love them.
Heard. Yeah, absolutely. Well, with all of that table setting, all of that excitement, what do y'all say we go ahead and jump into the first call and talk to Sully in Virginia, who has evidence for the Christian God. Sully, tell us about it.
Yeah, so I have deductive evidence that entails the necessity of God's existence. I'd like to present it if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Please present it to us, and let this be a conversation. Please don't make me feel like you are just reading to me because I've been read to before. So I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to let you walk us through it. And please be okay with us stopping you and asking questions, maybe not accepting something right away, and respond in turn if you would.
Sure. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay out the argument. So premise 1, every contingent fact has an explanation. Premise 2, there is a contingent fact that includes all other contingent facts. Conclusion 1, therefore there's an explanation of this fact. Premise 3, this explanation must involve a necessary being. Premise 4, this necessary being is God. Conclusion, therefore God exists. So which premise do you reject?
Well, first of all, can you tell me what a contingent fact is? Is that just any fact?
Yeah, so a contingent fact is just a fact. Yeah, a contingent fact is just a fact that is true in the actual world, but not true in all logically possible worlds.
Okay. So
see this whole argument. I mean, let's just cut to the chase here. This is all presuppositional.
Right, we're coming back to the form of the kalam.
My issue with this argument is that, like you're saying that there has to be like a cause, but again, like, we don't have to know what this thing is, and we don't have to ever know what this thing is. And you're just putting in God, and you're lumping these things all together, but you're still not stringing them in a way that tells us that the answer has to be God, right? So how do you actually make that leap without just throwing that into the equation?
So nothing within the argument was invoking any notion of causality. This is an argument about an explanatory principle, the principle of sufficient reason, and explanations are going to be different from causality. So you're wrong. You're not tracking. The argument, again, is about contingent facts entailing some necessary explanation.
What is the difference between causality and an explanation? Because to me, those sound very similar.
Yeah, so a causal relation is going to be a relation between events. And a explanation is going to be a relation between constitutive elements that constitute the identity of some given thing. So it's not going to be the case that a causal explanation entails some identity explanation or constitutive explanation, which is what I'm appealing to here.
Yeah, I mean, you're still making, as Ben pointed out, that leap to God. You know, especially when you told our call screener, or as I understood it, maybe we've misinterpreted you, but the Christian God, that's still a leap that hasn't been accounted for.
And the fact that you're making an argument right now that you're not leaning into causality. However, you're going to have to, especially if you're, are you bringing in the Christian God? Is that the God that you're trying to bring evidence for?
Yes.
Does this God interact with the physical reality that we are in currently?
The God causes it, but this argument is...
So hold on. You just said that God causes it. So are you making a causal argument?
No, because this argument is an argument from the principle of sufficient reasons.
I really don't care as much about that. You are bringing causality into this now. So what it sounds like is you're trying to use philosophy to get out of having to explain the causality piece of it. And the point is, like, you can go down as many philosophical rabbit holes as you want. I really don't give a shit because I care about the utility of what are we doing with this information, right? If you're going to use this to convince me that there's a Christian God that is going to tell me how to live my life, I really don't care much unless you can demonstrate that that being actually is impacting the reality that I live in.
Yeah, so again, my argument is applying a general explanatory principle to a global state of affairs, which is the entire universe. And the argument I gave is a formal argument. You asked me a question about whether or not God interacts with the physical universe, and I accept that God causes the physical universe to exist, but that's not what this argument is establishing.
Right, but with the argument that you're giving, though, the problem, though, because the problem, though, with this, too, with the explanatory argument, could I just insert anything else into where you've inserted God for that? Like, you're saying that something, you're trying to explain the origin of everything, but I mean, we have Forrest Valkai in here that could tell you it's Roland the Closet Goblin that is in that spot. So again, like, this is just a meaningless argument at that point. Where are we going with this?
Yeah, so again, the argument entails the necessity of God's existence, and the reason why you can't insert anything into that entailment other than God as being a necessary being is because there's an abductive case that I'm making based on theoretical virtue about the nature of God's existence.
What qualities are you giving? Let's define your God that you are using in this spot. If you're saying that only God can fit in this, what are the qualities of this God, and why can't something else have those same qualities?
Sure, I'd be happy to. In virtue of me making an abductive inference in favor of the necessity of God's existence, I need you to demonstrate that you understand what an abductive inference is before I explain this. Do you know what an abductive inference is? Go ahead.
How about you go ahead and tell us?
So just to be clear, you're not capable of demonstrating that you understand this entry-level inference in formal logic.
Okay, so we're getting a little bit cute.
Yeah.
I want to be really clear. Not only have all three of us worked through various forms of the Kalam and these William Lane Craig arguments and some of these ideas multiple times, but there's footage of me like a month ago talking about how exhausted I am of having to explain to people who come in with that salty attitude that I've never heard these arguments before. We've broken them down in so many different ways. If you're calling this show, I have to assume that you know that there are valid counterpoints to all of this, and we are happy to try and walk you through some of them. But I really don't want to get into this space of, well, if you're too foolish to understand the things that I understand, because as Ben pointed out, like, the three of us are not specifically invested in these philosophical arguments for God. You know, Sofia and I in particular come from a much more human-centered liberal arts kind of perspective on these things. And that doesn't mean that we don't care or that we're not interested, but you are going to need to talk to us like we're people in order for this conversation to stay fun.
And we have an audience here, too, who might not have heard these arguments before. And so sometimes when we ask you to, number one, ask you to define the way you're using some of these terms, it's for us to understand how do we meet in the middle? How do we understand that we're not missing the point here. But also for our audience members, maybe someone's watching for the first time and doesn't know this. It's okay to kind of work through this stuff together. So we'd appreciate a bit less condescension, because we can throw that back if you want that. But
what a fun bitch slapping show that would be then.
That's more of an EXP game, right?
This is way too meta. Let's stick with the substance of the argument.
How about we'll stick with the fact that I have a microphone and I'm hosting this show, and I am inviting you as a guest to discuss it with me. If you don't like the rules of the game, you don't need to play. However, if you would like to explain to us the significance of an abductive argument and how it helps us further understand your explanation, please do.
Yeah, so just to be clear, that's another tracking error on your part, because the argument I presented is deductive, and I said I'm making an abductive inference based on the theoretical virtue of the
I really do not care what you're calling it. Just let's talk about, you just said, well, let's talk about the substance of the argument. Bring us the substance instead of...
You keep pivoting to meta. How
is it so
because
meta
we
to
don't
just
like the way you're talking to us, Sully, and we have a mute button and you don't. We have other callers on the line and you don't. This is not a high school LD debate. You are not trying to beat us. We are hosting a program and we are inviting you to join that program. So you're going to play by our rules, or we'll find somebody else who will. We'd love to hear your argument. We'd love to help walk you through it. Sincerely, we will, but we're not doing this in a Lincoln Douglas style.
Yeah, so just to be clear, do any of you reject premise one of the argument that every contingent fact has an explanation? Yes or no?
Stuff exists, therefore something caused stuff. That's what I got from that, right? Is that accurate?
As far as we know so far, up to this point.
Okay.
No.
Sure.
What I reject is that you think you have an answer to what that is. Mm-hmm. And our position is that we don't know. It's okay not to know. So my question is, how do you arrive at such confidence that your answer is the thing that explains that?
Yeah, again, because if it is true that every contingent fact has an explanation, and if it is true that there's a contingent fact that includes all other contingent facts, then it would just follow that that fact has an explanation. Now,
but hold on, Sully, though. But hold on. All you're saying is that things have explanations. None of this demonstrates that you know said explanation. Because I can follow you with, yeah, sure, this stuff has something that could explain it, but you have yet to give me any reason to follow you to your answer.
Yeah, so I'm giving you the entailment here. If there is a contingent fact that includes all other contingent facts, then that contingent fact would have to have an explanation. But the explanation for that contingent fact can't be another contingent fact, since it's the contingent fact that's explained.
So, Sully, you still haven't explained. So you still haven't. You're still just saying that stuff has explanations.
What is that explanation? How is it the Christian God?
Because I'm giving you a clear entailment.
Okay, what is your explanation? What do you think? What do you think the explanation is?
It has to be a necessary fact.
No, but what is that? What is the thing that you're getting to at the end of it? What is the explanation? Okay, how do you get to that piece? How do you insert God there?
I just gave you the entailment.
Okay, let's...
So if you're tracking what I'm saying, I'm giving you a straightforward entailment. If you're tracking what I'm saying, I can repeat it for you again, but I've repeated it 3 times.
All right. I sense that you're becoming impatient, and I get that, but I'm a big believer that if you can't explain something to like a 5th grader, then you maybe don't understand it yourself. So I'm going to ask some questions you're probably going to think are overly simple, and that's okay. You know, we have an audience. It's not just us sitting here. Tell me what an entailment is.
Yeah, so an entailment is going to be a conceptual relation between inferences.
Okay, so that would mean that there are 2 things that are related by an explanation. Is that kind of it, or am I not getting that?
No.
Okay, could you explain it to me like a 5th grader?
5th graders generally don't know what inferences are.
You know what an inference is.
5th graders generally don't.
Wait, so just to be clear...
We are asking you to explain it
at a philosophy lecture.
I feel like if you're
Sully,
You don't lecture fifth graders. You're missing the question.
But also, like, this is a huge pet peeve of mine that a lot of philosophy bros think that if you explain things in this overly philosophy jargon type way, that you're therefore inherently more intelligent than other people. But I don't know if you recognize that there are different fields of study and they each have their own jargon. Like, if I started talking like the way I talk with other doctors, I think you'd be a little bit confused too. There's a reason I don't talk with people that way. So you have some therapists and a physician here. We need to speak a bit more common language to be on the same page. It does not make you more smart than us. It just means we speak a little bit differently. Please meet with us in the middle, because if you're just going to pull this ego trip, then I don't think there's a lot of reason to talk to you, because it seems like maybe you're just more interested in sounding smart and not actually engaging with the conversation.
Well, and sure, you beat us, you make us look stupid, whatever, that's fine. But remember that there are potentially thousands of people who are going to watch this clip. And I would like for each of them to not have to pause it to look up, okay, so what is an inference in psychology? We're asking you to explain it to fifth graders.
Okay. So the premise that I was appealing to for the first premise is that every contingent fact has an explanation. So all that means is that the principle of sufficient reason is true. And what that is all that's saying is that all contingent facts are facts that do not exist in all possible worlds. So something being contingent means it's true in some possible worlds, but not others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm following.
sure, still not fifth grade level,
Great.
but
So, excuse me?
oh, I just said still not fifth grade level, but yeah.
But yeah, we're tracking.
Yeah. So the second premise is just saying that there's going to be a contingent fact that includes all other contingent facts. So there's just a contingent fact about all the contingent facts that there are.
So there is a extra explanation, the explainiest explanation that would explain all of the things, all of the stuff that is.
Well, all of the contingent facts, because premise one is establishing that all contingent facts have an explanation. And so if there's a contingent fact that explains all contingent facts, then that fact would have to have an explanation since it's a contingent fact.
Well,
this is a straightforward.
Sounds like we're
there-
getting to an infinite regress of explanations.
Yeah, like why is there one explanation?
That's not true.
That must.
Where do we end?
Yeah.
End then? Are you gonna say God?
Well, it's
is
not
that the
infinite
end
regress.
of your explanationception?
Yeah, because the explanation of all contingent facts can't be another contingent fact that is explaining them. So it has to be a necessary fact,
So it has
and
to
that
be-
is what is God. That is what God is.
The
Magic.
deeper magic from before the dawn of time.
Exactly.
But again, you're just asserting that. You're just asserting that.
No, this is an
God is-
entailment.
okay, tell me. All right. So
what qualities? So in this, why is God a necessary fact, and Roland the Closet Goblin is not? What qualities differ between these two entities?
Oh yeah, because the notion of God that is being entailed here is a notion of perfect being theism. So what God is one fundamental property of absolute necessity.
Okay, but if I claim the same thing
Yeah,
about
what does
Roland,
perfect
So
mean?
I made
yeah.
if I claim the
something.
same thing about Roland the Closet Goblin,
I made up something that explains all facts,
Yeah,
therefore
you
all
would-
facts
you would
are explained by
actually-
thing.
yep.
Yeah, so the problem with that is that I have more of an abductive case in favor of the necessity of this God's existence than the necessity of your being's existence.
See, and again, so here's where I have an issue with getting too deep into the philosophy, because at some point you're going to have to bring in like real world evidence, right? There's some point where you're gonna have to say this one as actually demonstrated in reality beyond like philosophy, right? Like your syllogism is only as good as your facts are sound, right? Like you have to have, like, if you can make a syllogism that says that like grass is carnivorous, and I mean, I don't know, there might be some carnivorous grasses. I don't know. You can make whatever statement you want, but like that doesn't.
Until you
that-
get to the real world.
And like your syllogism could be logically like making sense.
Well,
but then it still doesn't mean anything in reality because it's still false.
We can define ourselves into being correct and then feel very strongly that we are right because we defined ourselves into being correct.
Right, and that's the leap to God part. Like, this necessary being does not need to be the God of the Christian Bible by any means.
It doesn't even necessarily need to be a being.
Yeah,
We've never
so
seen any reason to believe that's the case.
Well, I gave the entailment. We can get back to that. But just to clarify, if your view is that all true facts are facts that are a part of the physical world, like empirical facts, then that's going to be problematic because
that's not at all what I said, Sully.
Facts about value.
And that's not at all what I said. Because if you came in here with like a deist perspective and you said that I believe there's some being out there, but it's doing nothing and it doesn't matter for your life at all, like, I don't have any reason to care at that point. None of us really have a reason to care at that point. And I probably wouldn't be having this argument because it's meaningless. But the problem is, if you're going to claim a Christian God, that has implications for my everyday life, like I said earlier. And if this does interact with the physical world, then we should see evidence within the physical world that demonstrate that that's the case, right? So are you claiming that this God does have impact on the physical reality? Because if not,
I would
don't care about that.
I would affirm that, but that's not what this argument is establishing, and I don't.
But the problem is,
Right,
your
so what's the
argument.
point?
There would have
Your
to be
only
physical
your
facts
argument,
that
Sully.
imply
Your
God's
argument
existence.
only goes so far. Like, you are mentally masturbating to the thought of like this defining yourself into correctness. But what does that mean for us? Like, how do if the whole thing is we need to like convert to a religion? Why the fuck should I do that?
Yeah, again, because this formal argument is in accordance with
That formal argument is not all that your formal argument did was say that there's some kind of explanation. And even if there's
it
some
shows
God
there's
that
a
is
necessary
an explanation, that doesn't mean that I have to change my life, right? Mm-hmm. You have to bring something else.
Yeah, but what it does mean is that you have rational force to accept the argument and accept God's existence. Because if you don't, then you're irrational.
I don't though, because you still haven't given reason to say that God is that explanation.
Yeah, your God has no description. If your God is just the thing that is required in order for the argument to make sense, then okay, sure, but it doesn't have any impact on the real world. It's not burning any bushes. It's not sending down any commandments. It's not, stoning gay people. And so I don't really care about it. And I think Ben was pretty explicit on all those points. Under other circumstances, I might continue this conversation a little bit longer, but I want to make sure to grab another phone call while I still have this group of hosts. So I'm going to give you just another minute to see if we can't clear up what is it that maybe isn't getting through on either side.
Yeah. So just to be clear, are any of you the types of atheists that has determined that God does not exist?
No.
No, I'm a 5 on the Dawkins scale if we want to go that direction.
I
think that generally describes most, but not all, of the folks that speak on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm content leaving it in the unknown unknowns. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, but if you haven't determined that God does not exist, then how could you determine whether or not any fact is related to him? You would have to first determine that God does not exist, and therefore no fact can stand in relation to him.
Right, but I don't, like I just said, I don't care about the quote unquote existence of God if that God isn't doing anything to anybody anywhere. If you tell me that there's a God who created the universe who is just fucking off somewhere in the multiverse, like, awesome, cool. So long as he's not like sending floods to people he hates, I don't care.
Do you think there are any true facts that exist?
We end up going down.
I don't know how that followed exactly, but okay.
I'm not giving an entailment. I'm asking you because if you think there are any true facts that exist, there's at least one true fact. Then if you have not determined that God does not exist, how could you determine that fact or any fact does not stand in relation to God?
Because I haven't made a determination either way. I say I don't know where all of this leads to the ultimate explanation, and I really don't care.
Is there a problem with I don't know here?
Exactly.
With the concept that...
Well, yeah, the problem is if you have not determined that God does not exist and you just say, I don't know, then you have no way of determining whether or not all facts are related to God.
Are you suggesting that you have to have...
that God does not exist?
I have to prove God does not exist in order to prove things are not related to this God I do not believe in.
Yeah, because how else have you determined that any fact does not necessitate God?
I mean, I can say it necessitates fairies, but it doesn't make it true. Like, how do you determine it's not fairies? We were kind of back to this idea of, like, why God? And why are we forced into making a decision?
Because there's nothing fundamental on your worldview.
Okay.
Nothing fundamental on our worldview. Okay.
I am here, and my worldview starts with that. Like, I think you've made a much broader statement here
about ourselves in ways that really aren't accurate. So I do feel like we're circling the same territory. I feel like it's pretty well tread, and I feel like I'm being talked over. So with that, Sully, we are going to say thank you. I know that you maybe will struggle with this, but I would really encourage you to go back and watch this tape and listen to how we say, this doesn't actually mean that. And then you sort of power through us. And perhaps you're right in some sense of that word, but I don't think that you are taking in our very real concerns and our issues with these arguments. Thank you so much for giving it a try and for trying to keep it civil with us, but we're going to go ahead and move on at this point. All right. How are y'all feeling? Glad to be here? You amped up?
Yeah.
You ready for another one?
I feel like I didn't contribute as much because there's this part of me that's like, philosopher bro.
Yeah.
I love to take things and bring them down to their simplest explanation. And honestly, I appreciate you pointed out that, it doesn't mean we're dumber because we don't have this same background. But like, I'm a dumb bitch. Like, I'm sorry. I might be, but if you can't explain it to a dumb bitch like me, then I'm not really sure how far you're going to get with it in general. So...
Yeah. And I mean, it's just like, sure, okay, I don't have an explanation for how everything came into being. I don't have an explanation for the ultimate purpose of the universe or whatever. So does that mean I should just, like, not show up to work?
Yeah.
Does that mean I should just okay, yeah, all these people are in the hospital. Too bad. I can't explain reality.
I guess maybe there's a God, but we're not.
I guess I'm going home then.
Yeah, well, I don't expect everybody who calls the show to have watched every episode of the show, Lord knows. But I do just want to point out that we've gone over and over and over and over this question from so many different angles, and there's no way that you are calling this show, reading this William Lane Craig's speech without having seen all of these issues. So, all right, well, with that, why don't we go ahead and talk to Steve in Nebraska. Steve, what you got for us today?
Yeah, hi, Christy. Sofia and Dr. Ben. So, I'm calling in this week because yesterday, when my mom was on her last breath, my wife, sister-in-law, and we heard a light tap, a light knock on her hospice room door, and I was right there next to the door, and without hesitation, I immediately opened the door, and there was nobody there. And I just wanted to know if you guys believe in spirits and what that you guys think that could have been. I couldn't have been imagining it because two other people heard the same thing I did. It wasn't a loud knocking noise, so I wouldn't have confused this knock with a knock next door. It wasn't anybody playing tricks because immediately I opened the door without hesitation, and there was nobody in the hall. There was nobody at the door.
Yeah.
So, how would you guys explain that?
Sure. I mean, we'll certainly try to talk you through it and see what we can do to help you wrap your head around it. But I really just want to say that spirits or no spirits, knocks or no knocks or whatever else, so sorry to hear that was your day yesterday, that's the experience of mourning and grief that your family is going through. I hope that we can maybe help bring you some comfort by helping you understand that aspect of this experience. But the real lead here seems to be you lost your mother, and I'm sorry to hear that. That being said, what would y'all maybe suggest?
It was expected, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she's at peace. She's in a better place. I hear that. In a better place, and she's not suffering anymore. And, I'm not seeing these tubes in her, and I'm not seeing her in pain.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't fall to us to tell you that that couldn't possibly be true, that there's no way that she's in a better place, that there is no better place. I mean, if that is how you feel, if that's what you believe, we absolutely want to respect that. And if you are in this place of believing or assuming that this knocking sound on the door is some meaningful sign of extra dimensions, of spirit worlds, of these other kinds of things, I think we might want to propose some alternate explanations for you to consider and take in. Sofia, let me kind of jump to you. What would you perhaps recommend as a reframing for this idea?
So I think the first thing I want to point out is that we're definitely not here to take away anything from anyone. And I was speaking to my mother about her own father's death, and she knows, my opinions and my views. And she said something about how she just needs to believe that what he spent his whole life devoted to was at least somewhat true. And that's cool. That's fine. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. It's not the conclusion I land on. So I think, what I think of, if we're getting to the specific event of hearing a knock, I think there's a lot of potential, possibilities of what that could have been. One thing that comes to mind immediately, during the sort of Sherlock Holmes era in Great Britain, there were two sisters who spiritualism was a big deal. People really believed in spirits. Seances were incredibly popular, and they would have experiences that they would say they could not explain. And these two sisters usually communicated with ghosts through knocking, right? And people there genuinely believed, and they looked, tried to find all of these explanations, and there was none that they could find. Eventually, it was shown that they were essentially using their joints, because they had like a funky joint disorder that would make a popping sound. And that was, how they were able to create this whole celebrity around it. So I think it's hard because it can be as simple as maybe it was a rat who scurried away, or maybe it was something moved, and it's harder. Honestly, even at my ripe old age of 34, sometimes sounds don't come from an identifiable direction anymore. Like maybe the sound was misplaced. Like there's just a lot of potentially relatively simple explanations. I don't, if it feels like that matters though, I think there are things in my own life I know I'll say, it's very poetic, or it makes this story that comforts me or that fits for me, and I'm just going to keep it. And I think that that's kind of okay too.
How does that strike you, Steve?
I mean, I had that door open as soon as we heard. It wasn't just me. We heard the tap on the door, the knock. It was a light knock. I opened that door right away. There was no animals running down the hallway, no people. It wasn't a prankster. There was nobody there.
Okay.
I thought, and I'm not primed to believe in ghosts and spirits, because I've never had a paranormal experience in my life. In my 59 years of life, I've never had this, so I wasn't primed or confirmation bias towards this. And it was just totally unexpected. And it really, it scared the bejesus out of me. It just totally freaked me out. I mean, I had to leave the room and go outside and have a smoke. I was like, whoa. I
mean, it's a moment of really profound emotion. And I think that goes to the narrative piece that Sofia is speaking on, because there's no way for us to sit here and prove what it was or wasn't. We can certainly offer some common conjecture. And if you want to, you can, knock all that down. You can say that there's no way it had anything to do with the heating and air conditioning ducts. You can say it had nothing to do with the possibility of somebody dropping a, creamer packet on the floor. Like any of those things that it could be, perhaps it wasn't, and we will certainly never know. But in that space of big emotion, it's really tempting to say that you do know and that it has to be tied to this or the other thing, when the reality is you probably hear bizarre or unexplained, building, creaking, reshuffling sounds all the time. and you don't worry about it and you don't think about it because it's not happening in this moment of like profound meaning.
I think I might also throw in.
Well, that was my, Christy, that was my thought, that it was the fan in the room that had rattled on the door, but it wasn't a rattling noise. It was like a light knock, but it wasn't that loud. It was more like a tap. Knock.
So it feels.
And we all heard it. Not all. There was 4 people in the room, and 3 of us heard it.
It feels like
My brother
there's
was on the other side of the room.
a focus instead of on the fact that hearing noises we can't fully explain is pretty common, and in times of heightened emotion, we might ascribe meaning to those things. It feels like there's this fixation maybe on specifically what it was, and I'm kind of curious, what would that change for you? Like, why does it matter to find a specific explanation for that knocking sound, which I would see is probably just something that, was happening in the building settling, or like I said, someone's joints creaking or something in a way that we.
I was next to the door. I distinctly heard the sound.
So why?
It wasn't like a.
What does it change for you?
Like what you're saying?
Say we can't explain it.
I don't know. I don't know what to think of it because I've never really believed in spirits.
Right. So I think what Sofia is asking is, why are you making that jump? Like, there was a sound. You don't know what the sound was, and therefore spirits? How do you make that connection?
I don't know, just the timing of it.
Well, and the timing.
Yeah, no, hold on. Definitely aliens. I'm seeing these chat comments. No, come on,
but
guys.
the timing, and you
okay, I've called in before with my beliefs, but that's no, come on.
I'm sorry
Steve,
if someone's being rude to you in the chat.
Yeah.
I don't see the chat right here, so like we're not looking at it. So I'm sorry if someone's being rude.
But Steve, the timing is an important thing too, because I don't want to discount your experience, and I fully believe that you experienced this phenomenon. You heard something, your family heard something, but it's important to recognize too that in the state that you were in a time of grief, especially at the time when everything was happening, even if you didn't quite recognize it, you probably were in more of a fight or flight state during that. The neurotransmitters going around telling you to be more vigilant of your surroundings, subconsciously you could have heard a noise that was more exaggerated than it normally would have been just because you perceived it differently in that moment. And so
it wasn't even a loud noise, though, Dr. Bennett.
No, but that's the thing. It may not have seen. No, but your ability to detect that noise may have been better because you were more able to focus on your surroundings because of your hormonal interactions. And it's something that you're not going to be acutely aware of because your body's doing all this stuff without you really paying attention to it. But in addition to all these other things, like I do believe that the timing is important to this. I think that the circumstances were important to this. And so we could say, yeah, there are some significant reasons why this may have happened. I again don't know if we can explain these things, but sometimes things that seem more significant maybe are that way because of a small physiologic change that you just maybe weren't aware of.
Yeah,
well,
Steve,
earlier,
I don't want to...
She was crying out to her mom and the knock on the door. I don't know. I mean, could that have been linked in some way? That maybe she's with my grandma?
Maybe if that's what... I think I'm kind of curious sort of why you called, because I think that, you heard a soft knock on a door yesterday in a state far away from
I didn't
us.
hear it. It was we. It wasn't just me.
Okay,
I had
plural.
2 other people that heard that.
You as a group heard that.
You and others.
There's only so much we can give lots of different ideas for what it could have been. There's no way we could prove that. But I'm curious, like, what is it? How do you want us to interact with this? Because I will say for myself, I don't believe that it was necessarily spirits. I think I would have a hard time thinking that. But also, that's my opinion, states away. I'm not involved with you or your mother or grandmother. And
Sofia didn't hear it.
Yeah, I didn't hear it. And I'm curious as to, like, I think if I heard this story in just real life, if somebody was telling me the story about their grandmother, I would just their mother, I would just kind of let it be, because if that's what's giving them comfort or giving them meaning, I'm not going to go out and correct it. So I'm curious what it is you are wanting in this conversation.
I'm just wondering if you guys believe in spiritualism, that there's maybe more to reality than what we can perceive.
Personally, no, but it's not an active unbelief, more than I just have never seen conclusive evidence. And I think knowing myself after I'm, say, watching a horror movie or something, how much it feels like the house is closing in on me after I turn out all the lights. I know we can be put into a state, if it's heightened emotion, of interpreting things in a way that would maybe confirm to us that there's a spirit there without there actually being one. So personally, I would say that I don't have an active belief against it, but I do not believe in a spiritual world, and I think we can be easily tricked. That doesn't necessarily have to have any bearing on how you experience
But it wasn't just
your mother's
me.
passing.
It wasn't just me that was that heard that. It was. I wasn't. It was. There were two.
We get that,
There were
Steve,
four
and I
people
can
in the room
appreciate
that
why
heard
having
that.
other people in that space might help to affirm your interpretation of events. But what I've heard both Ben and Sofia try to express that I maybe haven't heard you grapple with is that our emotional state changes our perception. And that emotional state is not just you, it's everybody in the room who is going through that experience and the ways that they are co-regulating and bouncing off of each other. I don't want to belabor the point, but if you're interested in maybe sort of proving this to yourself or understanding it better, look up the word neuroception or some of the ideas around Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, or really any great number of interpersonal neurobiology that will express that the way that we perceive the world, not just the way we think about it or the way that we explain it, but the way we actually experience it, is deeply changed by our emotional experiences. And I do think that even if we set all of that aside, you have not investigated every random noise you've ever heard in your life, but you feel deeply moved to investigate this one. And I have to say, it's because of the large emotions that are attached to it. It makes sense to want to have an explanation. It makes sense in a world full of death and loss to want to have a reason and some amount of hope. And your efforts to make meaning out of this random sound are something I have a deep compassion for. Does that mean that it was ghosts or spirits or anything else? I'm inclined to say probably not, but I appreciate why you would want to go to that space.
Well, I distinctly heard a tap. It wasn't a rattle. It wasn't the fan. I thought it could have been the fan in the room rattling.
I believe that you did, and what all three of us are positing is that the phrase "I distinctly heard" is maybe not as reliable as you think. Don't believe everything that you think. I believe that you heard it. Does that mean anything at all other than you had the experiential process of hearing a thing? It doesn't.
Well, I just think there could be more than the naturalistic explanations for everything.
Yeah, there certainly could be. We're not denying that possibility or potentiality. We're just saying that we don't see any reason to go there. So maybe, could be. And if it brings you comfort to hold on to that idea, I'm certainly not going to rip it away from you. The biggest thing I would suggest to you, if you are looking for advice, considering that you called in a show to talk to us, I think I would share with you that this has to be a deeply profound emotional experience. And I might encourage you to focus on that, to focus on the grief, on the relief, on the pain, on the whatever else you might be going through here. And to ask yourself whether these questions of sounds and spirits might be a bit of a distraction from sitting in that distress.
Well, thank you guys giving me some things to think about. So
Sure.
I appreciate it. And, I just don't think that maybe everything has a natural
Yeah, you may well be right.
Be more than what
Oh, Steve.
We're sorry for your loss, and we hope that you take good care. Ben, please.
Oh yeah, but I think too, since it's so, like, all of this is so fresh for you, I wonder if, go think about it a little bit. I mean, process this experience. Like, you've just been through a lot, and take some time, take whatever time you need, and maybe revisit this question again on the show in the future when maybe you've thought over some different details that maybe you didn't remember. And I guess I'd be happy to revisit it. But I think right now it's especially emotionally charged. And don't deny yourself kind of the space to process that.
Well, thanks for the kind words, Dr. Ben. I will. I'll have to reflect on this and thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks
Take
for
good
calling.
care. And we're sorry again for your loss.
Yeah.
All right. Well, a somber note to say goodbye to you two good folks on, but I very much appreciate you being here and coming and sharing all of the load.
I appreciate watching you do therapy on a phone call. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was good, right?
That's great.
How did that make you feel?
Even I'm a good enough therapist to know, and I'm barely a therapist yet. You don't just say that.
All right. Well, Sofia Spina and Dr. Ben, thank you so much. On deck, I've got Scott Dickey and Forrest Valkai. While we get everybody swapped out and loaded, I do want to remind people that below the chat, we are running a direct fundraiser. If you like what we do, please consider contributing to our cause. The ACA keeps 100% of your donation. YouTube does not take a cut. And I am very excited and happy to announce that on August 29th, the Atheist Community of Austin will be hosting a presentation by Seth Andrews with an introduction by Genetically Modified Skeptic and the Antibot. Join us at the Round Rock Public Library for an evening of pizza, conversation, and critical thinking. Tickets are available right now, tiny.cc/eveningwithseth. And with that, as they're getting mic'd up, I'd like to introduce Forrest Valkai and Scott Dickey.
Hi. Hey, everyone.
Yeah, excited to have y'all on. We do have some calls on the line, but I gave the folks earlier an opportunity to say a little bit about who they are and who the hell they're hoping to talk to today. What you got for me?
After you, sir.
My name is Scott Dickey. I'm a math educator for 25 years and get to hang out with a bunch of cool people today. So I'm looking to get some cool calls. So let's filter out the non-cool calls and let's try to get
nerds
cool
need
first.
not apply.
Oh, that's why I'm
well,
here.
actually, no. Yeah, like this
said I'm
is
a
the
math
wrong show
teacher.
for that.
Yeah.
No.
You
we
missed that
already
part.
brought in a Star Wars versus Star Trek conversation. So
Right.
yeah, bring on the nerds. Bring out your nerds.
Definitely, yes, definitely.
Hi, I'm Forrest Valkai. I'm a biologist and a science communicator. I don't know how deep we should. I hold undergrad degrees in science education, liberal arts and biology, general biology, and integrative biology with an organismic and evolutionary bioconcentration, master's in bioanthropology, and another one in biomedical sciences. And I'm currently a PhD student in in biochemistry and molecular biology. I freaking love biology, and I especially love evolution, so I'm really hoping to get some creationist calls. If we can get somebody who wants to call in and tell me why evolution isn't real, and that's the thing that I've been studying for the past decade, I want to know about it.
One of those
call and
fabled
talk to me.
evolutionists.
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
I also want to give a shout out to Sully for reminding me why I became a biologist and not a philosopher. That was an incredibly refreshing reminder of why science rules and staring at your own navel does not.
Fair. All right. Well, we do have some open lines. We have some callers coming up, but I'm told that right now we actually have a in-studio question from somebody here live in the audience.
All right.
We're going to cut to the crowd. What can we do for you?
Hello.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Reporting live.
Following up the previous call, I know that I grew up in a house that was old and creaky and not well lit, so there was weird things that ended up happening that, looking back, I could definitely contribute to more scientific explanations. Was there anything for y'all in your youth that was just weird. And looking back, you're like, oh, I can explain that now that I have more knowledge or access to the internet in order to look up an explanation.
Oh man, are you ready for my life story? Because so much of it centers around that.
Yes.
You know, as a autistic kid growing up in a evangelical community that was all about spiritual warfare, everything had a spiritual explanation. I mean, if the car didn't start, if you found $20 in your pocket, like that was either God or the devil at all times, always. What was y'all's experience?
Personally, I've never. I was always about figuring things out. I was always about taking my toys apart. I was always about
you investigated the things that went bump in the night.
I did, yeah. And so I didn't sleep until I had those answers. And so so that's not really something that I'm familiar with. You know, sitting there wondering and having those unexplainable experiences. To me, that was just a motivation that gave me a direction to go with my exploration of the world. So.
Sure.
Yeah. I was raised pagan, so I had similar beliefs to what Steve was espousing in there. And so like when I would feel a cold spot in the room, my parents would tell me, oh, that's a ghost that's there. You know, and now I understand a little bit about how cold works sometimes, and it's a little bit different, right? Or if I felt a particular kind of way about a particular situation, oh, that might be an ancestor looking over and like giving you some sort of a nudge or whatever, instead of just, you probably have some anxiety because you're 12, you know? And like, so those kinds of things definitely I can look back on and see that like the deep concern that I had about the spirit in my room that was causing me a nightmare probably isn't as compelling of an answer as there was a train nearby that made a weird sound or something else that came into it. And really, over the course of my life, as I've learned to like really critically analyze evidence and think about, you know, just what could possibly be real, it's become more and more apparent that like if we're talking about, you know, whatever ghost, magic, supernatural thing, something that we don't actually have proof of, something we don't have anything better than anecdotal evidence for. And you know the old saying that, you know, a bunch of stories is anecdotal evidence and a bunch of anecdotal evidence is called bullshit. So like if we have something that we have no better than anecdotal evidence for, then the most silly, ridiculous, wild, over-the-top explanation that involves real things is more rational than that. So if I, you know, have this experience with someone, you know, knocking on a door or I think I hear a voice or whatever like that, you know, either I hallucinated something, I could have been drugged, I could have just had a psychotic break, there could be a gas leak, there could be a multi-billion-dollar multinational conspiracy specifically with the purpose of fucking with me in that moment. And
Can't rule it out.
Those are all things that actually exist. Those are all things that are based in real things. And that means they're all more rational than thinking maybe there's this extra dimensional, extra planar reality that we just don't have any evidence for. And that's what's just as I've grown thinking, yeah, a lot of things from my childhood. Now I look back on them like I can understand why this information, why this explanation was unsatisfying because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't solve anything.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want me to be a little bit more specific, I'll say that in particular, the study of psychology generally, but especially hypnosis and perception really destroyed whatever lingering vestiges of my faith were still there. There were so many experiences that I had around like, you know, God perfectly lining up my schedule or of going to, you know, church camp and crying and praying in tongues and falling under the Spirit and seeing visions. I mean, we were like real evangelical. So like I had all of those firsthand experiences, and they were sincere. You know, they were real for me in meaningful ways. And then I began to understand that you really can't believe everything you think. And that was the biggest thing that I wanted to stress to the caller. It's not that you didn't have that experience at the level of experience. In a sensory sense, I'm sure that you did. And there are so many things between the outside world and the experiencing self that can go awry. You know, the mood that you're in, how much sleep you've gotten, the substances you've consumed, but also your assumptions about the world, the things that you believe to be true kind of create the truth as you experience it. I really cannot stress enough how just an introductory book on hypnosis will have you walking around the world for weeks going, oh shit, this is all made up. Because again, at the level of experience, it is made up.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah. So I hope that brings a little bit of answer to the question. It's certainly a big one.
Yeah. I would just also quick add that it's not necessarily, I know I just said that I would always track down the answer and I would always try to figure it out right then and there. But I think especially when you're dealing with an emotional situation, it's not necessarily that you need to have an answer right away. I mean, we have this natural inclination to want to explain things, to want to justify things, to want to understand, you know, how this fits into my life and how I view the world. But it's okay to just experience it and then maybe reflect on it later in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. And you know, you don't have to come up with what was the explanation for that knock at the door. You know, you can figure that out later. You can just, you know, deal with your grief at the moment and, you know, figure out the details when it's more convenient.
Yeah, maybe the answer is I was just sad.
Yeah.
Could be.
And honestly, there's nothing wrong with just saying I don't know. The most available explanation is not the best explanation all the time.
Yeah, you can't immediately like leap to.
Yeah. It's and that's fuck, oh my God, that's tough. Especially when you're in that deeply emotionally vulnerable place. You're hurt,
for sure.
You're scared, you're grieving, all the things. You want the closure of an answer. And just sitting there with I don't know, it's rough. But it's a lot more honest, and it's going to do you better in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wish I could quote the actual study for you here, but I was so shaken in, I want to say, like sophomore year of studying psychology as we were talking about the mastery complex and these ideas of how our brains just so desperately want to feel like we are in control in a deeply chaotic universe. And there are really fascinating studies about folks who are diagnosed with cancer, say, who had this like very specific genetic form of cancer where there was something like a 90% chance if you have this gene, you will have this disease. And yet in interviews and in all of the like survey research that went around it, people were just so convinced it's because I spent too much time in the sun. It's because I smoked in my 20s. It's because I did this or I did that. Because if we can have an explanation for something, then it makes us feel like we are in control of it. It makes us feel like we can stop that from happening again by changing our behavior. And it stops us from having to deal with the fact that we live in a random universe where, you know, bread trucks can just hit us for no reason.
Do you think also in that particular case, like having someone to blame also, and that person to blame happens to be you, who you are the most intimately aware of?
You have control over as well, ostensibly.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I did this thing, not my genes, but I did this thing that allowed it, and now I have to be mad at myself. I have someone to take out my anger on. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason why so many of us tend to blame ourselves for every tragedy in our lives, because it makes us feel like we're in control and that there is justice in the universe, and divine retribution takes the form of us beating ourselves up and criticizing ourselves all day. It's hard to work through. It's something we come to naturally as humans, and I don't mean to get like too far afield and preach my, you know, mindful self-compassion philosophies, but
Preach, girl.
Yeah, right. It's so easy to hate yourself because if you didn't, then you would have to accept that terrible things just happen all the time.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because that is exactly, when I was pagan, when I was a kid, I was taught about that whole, like, the secret, the law of attraction, and, like, what happens to you depends on your thoughts and your feelings.
What you put out into the universe is what you get back.
Yeah. And so, I did the
you manifested this terrible thing.
Even though I didn't believe in a god or angels or demons, all these things, but, like, when something bad would happen, you know what, though? I've been pretty grumpy for the past couple of months, and I bet that's why my dad died that weird way. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. It's like, okay, I brought this on myself by being melancholic as a regular thing, and that created the bad vibes that made this person have this bad day around me. And so it's I've never thought about it that way. That's really interesting.
We're a meaning-making species. We will find the patterns in static the longer we stare at it, and it makes sense that we would want to. But again, just don't trust everything you think.
Epiphania and pareidolia and all that shit.
Yeah, it's some good stuff.
Well, if we can blame, then if we can't find a blame, if we can't find a source, then it might happen again.
Right,
And so-
right,
so if you
exactly.
blame
So that,
yourself,
that
then
sense
at
of
least-
control, the mastery over the
Exactly.
situation
Yep.
dissipates.
Yep. As long as I just don't do those things again,
Yeah.
then everything will
That
be
my dad
okay.
won't die again.
Right.
Yeah,
don't
which
want
is how
that.
we get incredibly superstitious about these things. We have to do everything in a particular order.
Right.
You can't change your underwear if you want your team to win, clearly.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Wearing these same shorts for 30 years and they still haven't done it yet. Someday it's going to work.
I keep wearing
Hasn't
these
been
underwear
answered
and
yet.
people keep not proving God, so why
Hey.
would I change them?
Exactly.
Okay, well, what do y'all say we jump into a conversation with James
All
in
right.
California,
Let's do it, yeah.
who I think has some questions about the nature of the show. James, what's on your mind?
Yeah, hey guys, and don't misunderstand me. You know, I really do enjoy the show. I was, watching Forrest this morning debating some knucklehead about, is evolution true? But it seems a bit kind of repetitive counter apologetics. I don't care if God does or doesn't exist. I don't care what people believe or don't believe. What I do care is the damage religion is inflicting on this planet and all of us. And evangelicals gave us this current White House. We're living in dangerous times. And so I would love for this show or other shows like it to help us mobilize opposition to Christian white nationalism, to highlight the threats to secular democracy. But I don't hear that. I just hear these ridiculous arguments about ghosts and, who knows, right? That's kind of my point.
Yeah,
Sure.
no,
It's a fair critique. Go ahead.
I think it's really important to remember that, like, those two are not exclusive categories. The reason why
One leads
people
to
are
the other.
able to vote for somebody based on what they think God wants, and I have to be careful because we're a nonprofit and I can't say too many things about specific politicians. But the reason why, and I can let you, the reason why people are able to then get into this idea of like, all right, Jesus told me I have to vote this way, so I need to vote for the least Christ-like person in the world because that's what Jesus said to do, is because of those silly ass arguments that we get on shows like this. And so the people who call in and say, listen, I know that God's real because where else could things have come from? Or I know I didn't come from a monkey, or because there must be something upon which all things are contingent, or whatever the other argument that we get every damn day. Those arguments are common because they're effective if you don't think about them. And religion is really good at passing on what I like to call everlasting thought stoppers, Don't question God. Who are you to question the most wise creature in the universe? And if you accept that there is no God, then you must have no morality, and all the other bullshit that we have to deal with every day. I hate this microphone. It deserved what it got. All this other bullshit that we deal with on shows like this every single day. Those simple arguments allow people to then indoctrinate themselves and lie to themselves to the point where they vote for and believe and say and do monstrous things. So I can sit here and argue about Donald Trump. I can sit here and argue about Christian nationalism. I can sit here and argue about all this stuff. And boy, I intend to. But at the end of the day, the most common people that are going to call us, the most common people that we're going to talk to, the arguments that are going to get through to the most people at the most, or the most effectively, the most amount of time, are going to be those simple things that indoctrinated them in the first place and caused them to believe in these things that allow them to make those massive leaps of logic and of morality that get them to these places.
Yeah, and
Do you think you're changing any minds?
I certainly have to believe so. I don't know what you two would say to that question, but I've been doing this for long enough, and when we have events like, why am I not remembering the name for Bat Cruise? Geez, Bat Cruise Weekend. When we have events like Bat Cruise Weekend, or we come to the studio library and I get to meet people, I have had so many people come up and tell me directly and personally, you did this for me, you changed this for me. And yes, that's the self-selecting group of people who came out for an event like this, but I do see it in the comments. I don't think that any one random YouTube clip is likely to be the one that puts somebody's life on a completely different trajectory, but I do believe that there's a reason why so many people work so hard to volunteer and show up to this space. I do think that it matters.
I think it's really important to point out also that like it's easy to assume when you see this show that the person we're trying to reach and trying to change the mind of is the caller. And that I can tell you that's almost never the case. When somebody calls into a show like this, more often than not, they are bought in. They are a true believer, and they think they've got the one argument that we've never heard before that is going to shatter our worldview.
That definitely wasn't on the show last week.
Right. And so like those types of calls, when we can reason through them and talk about them and be calm and rational about them, the people whose minds we really change are the people who are listening in, who are on the fence. The most common deconstruction story I hear over and over and over is, I was looking for good arguments for God, and the more I tested those good arguments or watched shows like this, the more I saw those good arguments falling apart. I was looking for good arguments against naturalism, against evolution, against whatever, and the more I learned it, the more I could only find good arguments for this stuff. And so when people tune into these shows, very often they're one of three people. Every now and then it's a true believer who wants to call and tell us something, or a true believer who wants to listen to the show and figure out what the atheist mindset is. Those people don't stick around for long. The other group is people who have already deconstructed or are in the process of deconstructing, who desperately need some side of community. They have just lost their family, they've lost their community, they've lost their church, they've lost friends, they've lost relationships, and they're looking for people to tell them that they're not crazy and to give them permission to criticize the religion that they're coming out of without being struck by lightning. And the third and biggest group that watch these shows are people who are doubting and are scared and want very badly to hear somebody else put on those big, strong arguments and see what and those are the last fighters for their beliefs and their faith. And when they see us be able to handle those things, that gives them the opportunity to then start to question things for themselves. And those are the emails that I get the most. Those are the people that I meet at things like this. Those are the things that I get letters in the mail or comments on YouTube, is people who are like, they've never called in, but I watch the show every week. I watch you on these different programs, and I've learned so much about these things. And this allowed me to question my faith. And the second I questioned God, he disappeared. And that's what it's all about.
And I also think it's important to
Well, you guys should be applauded for that. Right.
Well, thank you. Thank you
very much.
But I also think it's important that to recognize what kind of role our show plays in the larger conversation as well. I mean, if you say, well, the callers are kind of repetitive, and that's fine. That's people calling in to talk to us. It's right there in the name of the show, Talk Heathen. We want to talk to people. We want to have a conversation. And I think that step alone is a very important part of the process. And various conversations are going to ring with various callers and various listeners. And you know, that's the way it goes. I don't know if you've noticed, but we actually have a caller on the phone right now that we're talking with that has a different topic that we haven't talked to earlier today. And so I think the fact that you wanted to call in and talk to us about that, I think that adds to that conversation. That forces us to look at this process in a different way that maybe we weren't seeing before. Maybe it'll take us in a different direction than some of the people that we were talking to earlier. But that's all part of the overall conversation. We all contribute. We all gain from it. And I think that's a healthy way to have a society, is that open forum for discussion of these kind of things. And I'm grateful that you felt comfortable to call in and present us with this question, because it gives us an opportunity to address the exact issue that you were bringing up and to approach these issues with from a slightly different direction, or focusing on a different aspect of that conversation. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I really appreciate you taking my call. And you guys are brilliant. Love listening to you.
They are.
A lot of times it's just good comedy. I mean, there's a lot. Forrest just cracks me up with some of his conversations. People that want to debate a biology PhD, student, more power to you. Good luck. I wouldn't do it.
Sure. Well, and James, I don't want to turn it around on you overly much because I appreciate the meta question and the conversation, but I also want to encourage you to be the call that you want to see on these shows. If you want to call in and talk to us about white Christian nationalism, you don't have to have this meta conversation about why aren't we talking about white Christian nationalism. Call us and let us talk to you about that question. To anybody who is watching this show right now, if you have a question that you feel like, well, why don't they ever talk about that? It's because you haven't called, and I'd love for those folks to get involved.
So let me, and I'll be brief, and you guys can, drop me from there. But what I want is yours and your other co-hosts, brilliant minds, for some guidance on how to combat these people, because they got money and they got power.
Yeah, they do.
And they are just running roughshod over American society.
Yeah.
Over women's rights, over children in schools. I mean, 10 Commandments in the schools, really?
Yeah.
And so how do we mobilize? Because that's what I'm looking for is.
I'm happy to tell you there are great organizations out there that's their whole job is to coordinate and mobilize people in the fight against this kind of nonsense. You're calling into one, right? So like the ACA, that's one of the things that they do. The Freedom from Religion Foundation, that's the type of thing that they do, right? Is trying to, and there's plenty more examples of organizations that are out there trying to fight that good fight. The ACLU is trying to fight that good fight to make sure that we have a maintained wall, a barrier between separation of church and state, to make sure that we don't have these politicians, who I cannot name, going out of their way to force Christianity upon people. Or, just for example, just as a hypothetical, putting things like PragerU, which is a self-described conservative Christian organization, which the founder, Dennis Prager, is on camera saying, yes, I indoctrinate children. The point is to bring doctrines to children. Of course, that's what I do. Speaking at go figure, Moms for Liberty conference when he's saying that, right? You can learn more about that on my channel if you want. But these folks now being put as public school curriculum to teach that slavery isn't that bad, and to teach that the founding fathers were actually all super awesome dudes that never did anything wrong in their entire lives, and to teach that capitalism and Christianity are the only way to be a good human on the planet. Like those types of things, those deliberate encroachments and actual indoctrination, those are things that organizations like the Atheist Community of Austin, Freedom from Religion Foundation, the American Civil Liberties Union, and many, many more actually do work on. So if you want to help mobilize people, pick up the phone and volunteer, because people need your help. And that's the best advice I can give you for that.
You're here.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, thank you so much for the call.
Register to vote, y'all.
Yeah.
It's a scary place.
Yeah, no question.
I can't tell you who to vote for because we're a nonprofit, but register to vote.
Yeah, I hope everybody will, because I know they say to think global and act local, and I'm here acting, but when it comes to those big picture questions like the last caller was asking, I don't want to think about it anymore. I am tired of the thinking global part. I would like to think only about my very small world as much as possible.
It's hard.
And that type of avoidance is part of the problem.
Keep thinking. That's important.
Well,
sure.
And it is so natural because you're bombarded every day with horrible news. With these people are losing their rights over here. These people are being rounded up into camps over there. There's a genocide going on over here. There's people being trampled in the streets over there, and you're just tired. And I got to tell you, if you're out there and you're going through that, as I am, as Christy is, as Scott is, as everybody is, just as tired as you are about hearing about it, think about how tired those folks are going through it.
Heard.
And just try to stay there. And Christy will tell you, and he's right, to take care of yourself, and he's right. And the second you learn,
I was getting to that.
And the second that you learn how to take care of yourself and do all that stuff and still be a super productive, call me and tell me how, because I'm trying, y'all.
Lines are open, 512.
Yeah, right.
Please call me how to be an effective, tell me how to feel like an effective activist while also occasionally going to bed. Figure that out.
Okay, well, before we wrap up the show, what do you say we talk to Gabe in Texas?
Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good.
Gabe, you have some questions about discussing vaccine efficacy with a young Earth creationist. That is going to make for such a clickbaity title. Yeah. I'm excited for this conversation.
Right. Wait, it's so boring.
Correct. I've been atrocious at it. Hello, Scott. Hello, Christy. Hello, Forrest.
Howdy.
I've not had success at all teaching young Earth creationists about evolution and about vaccine efficacy.
Well, who are these people that you are teaching? What is the context in which you are espousing this information? Because that's going to be deeply important to how people take in information.
Well, to be honest, they're on TikTok. They're the Christians that are on TikTok trying to say that evolution's false, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, social media activism will absolutely wear you out. I'll point that out. I do appreciate you trying to get good information out there. Please don't let your self-esteem or your personal well-being live and die based on how that goes over for you. I mean, believe me, looking at the comment section of this show is not always great for your mental health. But that being said, is there maybe more specific advice that y'all might offer, some information about how to discuss vaccines in particular?
I've got something, but I've been talking for a long time, so I can wait.
I was just going to say, just talk to people. I mean, just talk to these people. Develop a relationship. Are they? Did we say? Were there specific people that are they your family members? Are they your people in your community? I mean, what?
No, they're the Christians on TikTok. There's plenty of Christians that have a large.
So kind of random strangers.
Spread misinformation.
Just
not necessarily random, but they have a large following.
It can be difficult to hammer facts over people's heads. I mean, people the guard goes up, they get resistant, they don't really listen to you, they don't really consider what you're saying. And so, one thing that you can do is just not, it doesn't have to be here's the facts, and if you don't believe them, then you're just going in the wrong direction. It's a matter of how you present that. If you present it in such a way that, let's explore this together, or let's examine, let's see what we can find. What information do you have? Let's look at that. Here's some information that I have. Let's go through this together. And if it's more of a joint effort, then it will feel less combative and less confrontational. And when somebody's feeling like they're in a confrontation, the shields go up and and they tighten up. And so try to communicate in such a way that it's a collaborative effort. If ask them, are you interested in figuring out how the world works? Do we want to know what's right here? Is that what's important? And so let's explore that together. Let's push down that path together, and that can make a big difference just in the way that you present it.
Yeah, I would parrot the end of that, because I have gotten a tremendous amount of not just success in an online discussion, but also just peace of mind by starting conversations, by asking when someone comes to my comments and says something stupid about vaccines, something stupid about Christianity, about evolution or whatever. I've been starting by asking, are you actually asking me for an explanation about this? Or are you just here to say some shit?
Right.
Like, what are we doing? Are you actually wanting to have a conversation? Because if you are, I'm happy to tell you why what you just said is nonsense. But if you're just here to say some shit, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste your time. We can move on from that. You've said the shit. It's great. And then now when they're like, okay, well, no, I actually want to say it. Now they are in a listening mood instead of a combative mood. Now they have decided, they have told me I am here to listen to you. And now I can leverage that. Like, okay, well, don't interrupt me. Don't cut me off. Let me explain to you.
You asked for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And when we get there, I find specifically with talking about, vaccine efficacy and vaccine hesitancy, there are studies, plenty of studies showing that, like, even the more Christian somebody is, and especially the kind of white nationalist Christians we were talking about, and all this, those folks have a very high rate of vaccine hesitancy, very high rate of distrust in medical establishment and doctors and in medical research and in science in general. And conspiracy theory spreads like crazy, and the same people who have no idea what might be in the Mountain Dew they're drinking and the Big Mac they're eating and the cigarettes they're smoking and the other medications that keep them alive every day will tell you that they don't know what's in that vaccine, so they just can't trust it. And so what I like to do is to try to just relate it to other things that are a little bit less scary, a little bit more mundane. Here's an example. Seatbelts are only about maybe 50 to 60% effective. On a good day, 60%. So you have about a 50% chance of a seatbelt really reducing the risk of serious injury or death in a car accident. Airbags, you're talking like 35 to 40% maybe, right? So seatbelts and airbags, which we all agree are probably good things to use when you are driving, are much less effective than a vaccine where you have like, the MMR vaccine is something like 95% immunity if you have. And so like, you have these vaccines that are remarkably effective. And the same people who are going to tell you, well, it's not 100% effective, so I don't trust it, guarantee you have an airbag in your car. And you're not going to cut that shit out because it's only 35% effective. Now imagine car crashes are contagious. What do you want in your car? You want the thing that's going to save your life. Even if it's not a guarantee, you want that little bit of help. And so if you can start to think about it that way, now you can think about, okay, this thing, it's not 100% effective. It doesn't prevent me from always catching the disease. It doesn't prevent me from always spreading the disease, but it makes it much less likely that I catch it, and it makes it way less likely that I get severely sick or die from it. And I can spread this to my friends and my loved ones. I don't want my grandma dealing with this either, so I'm going to make sure that I'm protected to make sure that she's protected. Just like if a car crash was contagious, if I put my grandma in the car, I'm going to make damn sure she has a seatbelt and an airbag. I'm not going to drive with her, without those things because I care about her life. So I'm going to make sure that I'm protected by getting a car that has these safety features, and that protects my passenger as well, the people that I love. That's the way that I would try to reach out to people this way. And I'm telling you, it's going to be hard, and it's probably still not going to work, because those everlasting thought stoppers are going to jump in and people are going to say what they want to say, what they've been taught to say, but whatever their favorite podcast told them to say. But at the end of the day, that's the best way that I can try to bridge that gap with people like that.
So can we get our hands on that vaccination for those car crashes? Is that gonna get
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. That's a relief.
How's all that strike you, Gabe?
One of the things I've been trying to do to encourage better conversations is I guess this is a question. How do you get them to call, for example, Talk Heathen? Because I've only been successful in my entire life for one person to actually call. And
same thing I said earlier. If you find out, tell me. Yeah. the amount of people in every one of my comment sections telling me that they can call in and destroy me in a debate versus the amount of people that actually call and try, massive disparity. So you let me know when you find out.
I appreciate you putting yourself out there and trying to put good information out there as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right,
enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you so much. All right, well, it feels like we are wrapping up so much faster than I wanted to. This was a good time. Like I said, we really do look forward to this all year. I mean, 364 more days until back.
Start the countdown.
Start the countdown again. Before we head out, though, I do want to make sure to thank our top 5 patrons. Of course, at the top, again, we have Oops All Singularity, Dingleberry Jackson, Kalevi Helvetti, J.A. Carlton, and in the 5th spot, Moldrin D. Malcontent, who I haven't gotten to say that one yet. That's fun. I'll be wrapping my tongue around that for a while. Our honorable mention this week in the 6th spot is Bethany P.
Try harder, Bethany.
Thank you to everyone who gives to us on Patreon. If you want to hear your name read, you can help us out at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. Of course, I want to remind people about the question of the week. What do you guys say? What shouldn't you see in the atheist community?
What we shouldn't see is bad arguments against religion. I mean, there's plenty of good arguments Don't use the bad ones.
Don't use the bad
Don't
ones.
use the
Okay,
bad
fair.
ones.
So more of a prescriptive shouldn't.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would say, I want to say something quippy, but honestly, the thing that frustrates me the most is when people in atheist communities are like, oh, they call religion a mental illness or something like that.
Yeah, that one drives
so
me nuts.
unbelievably counterproductive and
Yeah.
stupid.
That's one of the bad ones.
Yeah,
That's one of the bad
don't
ones.
do that. Just don't do that.
Yeah.
Especially if you were once religious and deconstructive. Don't be a dick to your past self.
Yeah,
Come on.
right.
All right. Well, good advice. We've got a loaded atheist experience coming up later today. If you are watching this show live, I again want to say thank you to my cast earlier today with Dr. Ben and Sofia. And I want to say thank you to our incredible crew. But most importantly, I am definitely sending out love rings to our live studio audience. Everybody who traveled to be part of this incredible weekend. Everybody who did the work. Anybody y'all want to send out some love rings to before we step out for today?
I would like to send love rings out to my wonderful wife who is back in Minnesota, who didn't come with me this year.
Oh.
I also have a lovely wife in Oklahoma, and also just squids in general. I want squids to have a good
Squids.
day.
Let's send out some
And
love rings to
squids.
all
the
squids.
squids out there having
everywhere.
a great day today.
All right.
Love you all.
Well, with that, I will remind everybody that if you don't believe, this is your community, and we appreciate you being here. And if you do believe sincerely, truly, I absolutely mean this from the bottom of my heart, we don't hate you. We're just not convinced.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/call TW.